So a few weeks ago, I made a video about my theory that TS2 could be a pop musical. And now we know the track list. And since I'm already down this rabbit hole, I started poring over the title names and I realized that, you know what? I can actually make these 12 tracks into a pretty coherent story, just like if it were a musical. So this is going to be a video series where I do a track-by-track walkthrough of what the story of these 12 tracks could be if it were a musical. And like any musical, there's always going to be sort of a central theme that the musical is going to explore, and there needs to be an A story, right? The title of the musical is The Life of a Showgirl. So of course, the central theme or our A story is essentially going to be Taylor as a showgirl who wants to figure out how to survive as a public figure in the limelight without losing herself. And that is essentially kind of a heroine's journey type of a story. So let's dive in. We're going to start with track 1, The Fate of Ophelia. That's also going to serve as the Act 1 opener of the musical. And typically for an Act 1 opener, it's all about world building, right? It's essentially providing critical context, and in this case, providing some basic rules about the world we're about to enter. And that basic rule is that every showgirl has an expiration day and will all end up the fate of Ophelia. If you've been paying attention to all the announcements on Taylor's website, every single countdown clock always starts with the word expires at that particular time, which I feel like is a hint towards that sort of ephemeral nature of showgirls that Taylor wants to convey. And I think Taylor is trying to connect the analogy between showgirl and Ophelia, which if you don't know who that is, well, read Hamlet. Some of the similarities between the showgirl and Ophelia, while they're both very beautiful and lovely creatures who are adored and even admired by the public, right? But unfortunately, they're both powerless because they don't control any of their own narratives and they don't actually control their own life choices. And as a result, their fate will either be they submit to that destiny or they self-destruct, like Ophelia. So this is setting the stage about sort of this world that we're entering into. Moving on to track 2, Elizabeth Taylor. So this is where we introduce our heroine, Taylor. She is a showgirl, and her goal and her mission is to change the prophecy of this fate of Ophelia as a showgirl, right? And her solution is essentially to create this public persona that is separate from her private persona or her private life. And this public persona is going to be someone like Elizabeth Taylor, who is a boss lady, who is always in control of her own destiny, despite of all the men around her. And she believes that by creating this public persona, and especially by protecting her own personal life away from this public persona, she can still be in charge of her own personal narrative and make her own personal decisions. That's her weapon, right? She thinks that she has at the beginning of this journey. And as we know about every story, typically the solution or the idea that our hero or heroine has at the beginning of the story tend to be ill-conceived, and in this case, maybe a little bit naive. All right, moving on to track 3, Opalite. This is where we introduce our B story, and in this musical, the B story is the love story. So this is where we introduce our love interest, Travis. And I know that a lot of people already know that Opalite is probably going to be about Travis because Opal is the birthstone for the month of October, which is the birth month of Travis. But I think the story behind the song is going to be pretty interesting because the thing is, Taylor is entering this relationship in a little bit of a misguided way. Because as we said earlier, she wants to separate her personal life from her public persona. So when she initially takes interest in Travis, she's mostly thinking about her public persona. Well, she is Bejeweled Showgirl and he is Opal in human form, so why not? And so she decided to enter this relationship completely closed off and at the surface level to service her public persona. We're going to find out soon how that goes. Moving on to track 4, Father Figure. So this is where we introduce the villain of the story. And I know that a lot of people were saying something opposite. They were saying that Father Figure could be about Scott, Taylor's dad, or it can even be, again, Travis, because Travis has been such a chivalrous boyfriend to Taylor who's like so protective of her, like a father figure. But I think father figure is actually a metaphor about patriarchy. And patriarchy can mean a male executive in the music industry like Scott Borchetta, who is literally a father figure to him until he betrays her, as we heard in the song My Tears Ricochet. Or it can also be like But Daddy, I Love Him, a critique about the misogyny in the fandom itself or in the society at large. And this father figure is going to seem like he is a sweet, protective figure, but it's actually a trap. In reality, he is the one who really wants to control the narrative and controls every single life decision of Taylor. And the goal is to extract all the glamour, all the glitter, all the talent out of her until she is carved out, burnt, and hollow, like a piece of wood. Yes, I said wood, which we'll talk about in Act 2, because yes, that's track 9, Wood. Moving on to track 5, Eldest Daughter. This is the aftermath of the introduction of father figure. And this is also the first crack in the armor of this public persona that she created. She's starting having doubts whether she needs to continue to be this boss lady Elizabeth Taylor character, or if she should be the eldest daughter to please the father figure, because the eldest daughter is always the responsible one. She's a role model. She always wants to meet the expectations of her father figure, and she always wants to do the most to please everybody. And so this is going to be the introduction of doubt and the introduction of struggle. This is going to be also the reveal that the initial solution that Taylor comes up is not necessarily going to work. So moving on to track 6, Ruin the Friendship. This is going to be a return to our B story. It's also going to be our Act 1 closer. It's going to be a huge number. It's going to be very poppy, high energy, and very tongue-in-cheek, because the story is going to be Taylor debating whether she should keep that relationship at the surface level with Travis, or if she should take the leap and really letting Travis into her personal life. At the end of that song is going to be her finally accepting the fact that she wants to invite Travis in because she's really falling for Travis. That's going to be the conclusion of Act 1. It might seem like it's ending on a positive note with Taylor and Travis' relationship moving in the right direction, but it's also going to start leaving some open questions and some underlying threat about this public persona separation from the personal life that Taylor created at the beginning of the show. Okay, moving on to track 7. This is going to be the Act 2 opener. So we're going to start the Act 2 on a very high energy as well. We're going to continue the B story. So in the Act 1 closer, Taylor decided to ruin the friendship and actually dating Travis for real, which is leading to track 7, Actually Romantic. So this is going to be the story where Taylor is actually enjoying dating a guy because this is her first time letting someone truly in to see her real self, versus all the past boyfriends that she dated where it's really about servicing her showgirl public persona. And so I'm expecting a lot of funny anecdotes of them visiting the Sydney Zoo or their date nights in Argentina. And I always expect a lot of Easter eggs of funny anecdotes of how the small things in those typical dates somehow become very, very different for her because this time it's actually romantic, which is going to be really sweet. Moving on to track 8. Wish list, with the 2 S's being dollar signs. This is when we move from the peak of that B story back to our A story again, and this is where everything starts going wrong for Taylor in the A story because the bad guy is closing in. The father figure is finally making his full-on attack. And a lot of people were thinking that maybe wish list is about Taylor's wish list, which basically speaks about how she's such a successful boss lady and a businesswoman, and she's checking off every single business goals off of her wish list, right? Or some people even saying that that wish list could be her buying back her masters. But I think this wish list is not Taylor's wish list. It's actually our villain, the father figure's wish list. It's the list of things that the father figure is trying to extract from Taylor, right? And the father figure is always demanding more from Taylor. And as I said, is trying to extract everything, all the glitter and all the talent out of her and suck her dry. And so this is going to be the song where Taylor's going to be realizing how there's so many people constantly asking her to do more things. Reputation TV, for example, debut TV, for example, and that overwhelming sense of burden that she feels that she can never meet those high expectations of her. And it's going to all culminate towards the end of the song when she realized that instead of I can do it with a broken heart, she can actually do it even with her heart healed by Travis. Moving on to track 9. This is the most baffling song for a lot of people. A lot of people were like, what the song could actually be about. But as I was saying, there has been a lot of foreshadowing earlier about what the father figure really wants. The father figure just wants to extract all the brilliance and glitter and the talent out of Taylor to make financial gains for themselves. And they don't care if they ended up leaving Taylor carved out, hollow, and burnt out like a piece of wood. And so this is at the stage of the musical where all hope is lost, where Taylor finally feels defeated. She felt like she has failed, she will never meet that expectation, and she is about to potentially suffer the fate of a failure. Moving on to track 10, Cancelled, with an exclamation point. This song is going to follow the all hope is lost moment from Wood, and this is where Taylor is actually going to finally realize the actual solution to her problem. And here is the twist. The solution is to cancel her own public persona, not other people canceling her, as a lot of fans are predicting. And what she really meant here is that Taylor finally sees the truth that by separating the public from her private self is actually not protection at all. It's the reason why the father figure can infiltrate her and start controlling her, because she thought initially that if I just allow the father figure to control my public persona, I can still protect my personal life, but that's never going to be the case. The best way to do it is to integrate everything, to be that authentic self all the time, 100%. It can set her free from the claws of the father figure. Moving on to track 11, Honey. This is where we go back one final time to our B story. So, of course, Honey can be a reference to Travis because you call your boo Honey sometimes, but Honey is also all about healing. So this is where Travis is going to be that emotional and psychological support of Taylor throughout her realization and throughout this ritual of her killing her public self and trying to integrate the public life with her personal life. And Travis is going to be there all along the way to help her heal using the soothing honey attribute. And as a result of that, she is essentially becomes Honey herself. And because why? Because Honey doesn't have an expiration date, which is her final way of defeating the fate of Ophelia from the beginning of the musical, which all culminates to our musical finale, the Act 2 finale, track 12, the title track, Life of a Showgirl, where it's going to be a huge celebration of the triumph of Taylor, of her heroic journey of figuring out how to survive as a showgirl. But in addition to that, she decided this is not just going to be her personal triumph, she's also going to share all of her learnings and wisdom to the next generation of showgirls like Sabrina Carpenter, so that no one will have to make the same mistakes that she did. That's the conclusion of The Life of a Showgirl as a pop musical inspired by the 12 tracks titles. What do you think? Do you like this whole story? Let me know down in the comments. And if you like it, please subscribe to my channel for more great storytelling moments like this one. I'll see you next time.